Well, hello. My name's Craig Johnston. I'm from Australia. I was a professional soccer player. I played for Liverpool, and I was lucky enough to be in probably a lot of people regard as the best soccer team of all time, winning 5 league champions, which is Liverpool, when we won everything. And we've got some Liverpool fans here. That's good. And I have a particular story which is particularly relevant to all of you people today. So I think this is going to be very interesting for you, but in order to make it even more interesting, I just told you who I was, and I'm going to tell you more, but I actually would love to know who you are, okay? First of all, and if we can make this, because it's also about technology, we're going to make it an interactive presentation. So I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to put your hand up. Anybody here like Liverpool? See, these guys are good. Okay. Manchester United. Oh, interesting. Arsenal. Boo. No, I'm kidding. I love them all. I love them all. Okay. Anybody doesn't speak English? All speak English. Fabulous. Okay. Well, we've only got 20 minutes, so I'm going to talk really fast. So my apologies in advance if your English isn't that good, and neither's mine because I'm actually Australian. So anyway, I'll try and tell you this story. Now, what's interesting about what you saw before, the future of technology, data, and how China can win the World Cup. When you're a professional football player, and you're a coach, and you're a credible member of the football industry, you don't say things like that unless you're looking for a lot of trouble, right, and a lot of loss of credibility, unless you believe it. So I will say here, my hand on my heart, I fully believe that China can win the World Cup. And what I'm going to try today is to explain how that can happen and why, because I think you'll be interested. So anybody interested in that? Okay, a couple. Okay. You know, one of the things I love in life, what football's about, enthusiasm. Right? So I need a bit more enthusiasm from you guys. Anybody want to know how China can win the World Cup? Okay. You know, a lot of you haven't put your hand up, which means you don't believe me, or you're just too lazy or tired or couldn't give a shit. Okay? So, I told you it's interactive, and whoever doesn't put their hand up, we're going to send them out of the room. Anybody here want China to win the World Cup? Mate, out you go. Go on, out you go. Okay, so here's what I believe. I believe that within every player, there is 3 or 4% of untapped potential. And by the way, how China win the World Cup is when they get more kids playing more often on a daily basis as part of their soccer homework that they do after school and at school. Because in 20 or 25 years' time, 30 years' time, there's a country called Brazil, one called Germany, one called Spain, I know there's some Spanish here, and one called France. Now one of them probably think they're going to win the World Cup. Why? Because their 2-year-olds now are playing with a ball and loving it. And dad's encouraging them, and mum's encouraging them, and the school teachers encouraging them, and their mates encouraging them. In China, it's not cultural. So how do you shift that culture? Another thing about Brazilians and Germans, I'll tell you. They're more likely than China, and most countries, to win a World Cup. But their kids have got 2 arms and 2 legs, and 1 brain and 1 heart. And you know what? So have Chinese kids. So there's no earthly reason why, if these kids aren't indoctrinated into the game, like the other countries do culturally, naturally, that they can't win the World Cup. So, I'm talking a little bit too much. And I'm going to get to the point. But before I do, just so I can keep it interesting for you, and so that I don't have to send anybody out the room, another show of hands, please. Is there any ex-professional players in the room? No? Is there any coaches in the room? Coaches, good. Any administrators in the room? Any club owners in the room? Okay, I'll get you on this one. Any parents in the room? Okay, quite a few, right? So you guys, more than anybody, are responsible for who might not win the World Cup, because it's all about the parents and what they pass on. Okay, so within every soccer player, there's 3 or 4% of untapped potential. Now, I used to say that to this guy here. Anybody recognize him, Kenny Dalglish? So I used to say to Kenny, and I used to say to Graham Souness and Alan Hansen, 3 of the most famous soccer players of all time, within every player there's 3 or 4% of untapped potential. And they said, no way, no way. That's rubbish, you know, you've always been a bit of a creative, you know, blah, blah, blah. When Leicester won the Premier League, these guys came back to me and said, within every player, there is 30 or 40% of untapped potential for one season. Okay? And that's people I admire and trust. So, the greatest story in the history of our game was Leicester City winning the championship. And every game, they had to beat Manchester United, Arsenal, Spurs, Liverpool, everyone that put their hand up. Leicester beat our team that year. And a remarkable fact during that was, when they played Manchester United, right, every single Man United player on the field was more expensive than the whole of the Leicester team put together. Yet Leicester beat them twice. Why? Head and heart. They wanted it more, and they played with something called joy. Right. Hands up, any soccer players in the room? I don't mean professional, but you just played it because you liked it. Well, that's good. That's good. Do it again. Right. All those without their hands up, turn around and look at the soccer players. Okay. Has anybody ever played with joy before? Well, there you go. Because at the heart of football is this perfect object that when you chase it, and you know, have you ever thought about this, but the ball is shaped perfectly to roll away from you every time, right? It's really hard to play. So, when you do something right, and you score a goal or you do a good pass, you feel the joy, you feel the love. That's what Leicester felt all season, okay? Is this a long, boring story? That's what we got to get kids doing, is loving the soccer ball. Therein lies the problem. How are our kids going to love the soccer ball when they've got PlayStation, Xbox, WeChat, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, right? The soccer ball has become very, very boring to our children, okay? Quick show of hands. Anybody believe me with that? You think I'm on the right track? Put your hand up. Okay, I'll give you a stat. Across Europe, the 55 countries in Europe, did you know that UEFA is losing 8% of registered kids a year across all of the countries? Registered soccer-playing kids. Why? I just told you, the game's become boring. Right. So, how did China win the World Cup? Well, once again, I'm nearly 60 years old. I've been around the world. Right, I've travelled around the world. I've lived in many countries. Okay, and it's about culture, right? And one thing I do know about the Chinese culture, they're thorough, they're efficient. Once they have a program, they finish it. Okay, and they've got something amazing that I am not seeing in any other country in the world, including Brazil, Germany, France, and the other favourite, Spain, that might win the World Cup. You've got a president that says, I want to win the World Cup.
we must win the World Cup. It's what I want in life. And I'm going, hallelujah, Xi Jinping, right? And he's passing this on to all these clever businessmen to say, go and do what you can do. So that's why I've said that China can win the World Cup, and I mean it. So now I guess you're all wondering how you do it. Well, I'm going to show you that. We break it down into steps. Okay. So talking about joy, right, I've noticed in China, you know, you've got Liverpool, you've got Barcelona, you've got Real Madrid, you've got the Brazilian Federation, you've got all sorts of coaches and all sorts of philosophies, right? You've got all sorts of expensive players, but there's never been a harmonized, unified measurement mechanic to measure if you're getting better. So that's the big problem with football, and not just China football, but world football. So I'm going to give you 4 big ideas, and when they settle in, it might take a while, you'll see why China probably can win the World Cup. Okay? So, again, I wish I had a soccer ball, because the answer to this starts and finishes with a soccer ball. Okay? So, actually, I'm not going to show you. I'm going to tease you. Right? So at the end of the day, you've got all these clever people coming from all over the world, clever soccer people. Hi guys, how you going? Thank you. Thanks for coming. You might be late, but thanks for coming. We've got 10 minutes left. Okay, all right. So you've got all these clever people from all over the world coming to Zhuhai, of all places, right? Put up your hands if you're not from Zhuhai. Okay, so we're all here in Zhuhai, right? What are we all doing here? What are we all doing here? I think we're all here, number one, because we like football, or number two, we're in the football business. But number three, I think we're all trying to find something where we get a little bit of improvement gain, which makes our team or our club or our boss or our owner happier. Or, hang on, our president. Right? Is that fair enough to say that? Okay, that's why I'm here. Well, actually wrong. I'm here to pass on some clever stuff, right? Because I'm doing this as a legacy, which is a funny word, but I'm going to tell you a lot of clever stuff today. As I said, I look around the room there and I see people that are here for football, but people meet technology. People meet television. I see FIFA officials from the very highest level. I see media guys. I see sponsors. I see advertisers. I see club coaches. I see scouting and recruitment. I see analytics. What are we all looking for? We're looking for incremental improvement gain. And I always say that if you're a club owner particularly, right, there's 4 things, more than anything, that people want in football. More money, more power, better players, and better facilities. If you disagree with me, put your hand up. I mean, I love the game. I've loved it all my life. But when you really analyse it, we all want better, right? And what I want more than anything as a legacy is more kids playing more soccer more often. And why I'm here in China is I want to get all the clever technology people, all the PlayStation people, and say, how do we make this ball interactive? How do we make it like giant PlayStations, so I can bounce the ball off that one, I can pass it off that one, and the target lights up and goes, mistake, and I've got to beat my clock. And I built 3 or 4 of these. You know why? Because it makes your mind and your feet work quicker. So, here's one of the biggest secrets in life. Did I say any coaches in the room? Put your hand up. Any coaches in the room? Well, apart from you two, block your ears. Right? I think that's part of the problem. Right? Why? Because I think we've over-intellectualized the coaching process, and the kids find it boring, and that's why there's such a drop-off in numbers. We've got to make the game fun through interactive technology by using this. using this, right, and bringing it together. Okay, so I'm going to give you 4 big ideas. Number 1, during a game, there's only 2 things a player ever does, right? Yes, a player runs and screams and says, give me the ball, and then he runs this way and he screams and he shouts and he over there and he goes like this, you know, and he puffs. There's only 2 things a player does. Anybody game enough to guess them? Put your hand up. Mate, you look like a bright young man. Any idea? 2 things a player does. This is one of the greatest, you listening coaches, secrets in the history of football. 2 things. And I've already shown them to you. God, I mean, if I was a high school teacher, I'd spank your bottoms right now for not listening and not understanding. There is 2 things every player does on a football field for 90 minutes. He gets the ball and he gives it. Anybody disagree? And I already showed you. Imagine if you had a giant trampoline there and a giant trampoline there embedded with LED lights and sensors. And then there was a square on the floor. The player hits the ball and it bounces back hard if he hits it hard because it's a trampoline. Okay, then he controls it in the box. Then he does it again. He does it 10 times and he does it in 30 seconds. Right? So then you say to him again, well, you made 3 mistakes and every mistake is worth 5 seconds, so your score is 45. So for the first time in his life, a player now knows how fast and accurate he is at the fundamental building blocks, the ABCs, the reading, writing, arithmetic of soccer. Coaches don't teach that. They teach players where to stand because they know something that we don't, because they're cleverer than us and they need to be paid. That's how coaching works. So they do steps 6, 7, 8, God bless them, and I actually love coaches deep down. Coaches do 6, 7 and 8. Nobody's doing 1, 2, 3. Right, so imagine now there's a trampoline there and you get closer and there's a trampoline there, right? And there's a target on the wall. So now I've got to keep the ball up. And every time I miss the target, a noise. 5 seconds more. So all of a sudden you're keeping the ball up. You're touching the ball. You're learning to love the ball. So these are giant playstations for the feet and the mind. Tomorrow morning in training, all over the world, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man United, not one of them will play soccer to train. You know what they do? They do little skills games that sharpen the mind and sharpen the feet. What does a PlayStation do with our kids? They want to get to the next levels. They become addicted. So that's what we're building. So if you've got that concept, there's only 2 things, and if you can make a player makes himself or herself faster and accurate at the core skills, they will get better on a daily basis, and you will have the data to prove it. Now, very quickly, the data comes from something I discovered when I was 15-year-old. If you don't know my story, I was told by a famous coach, Jack Charlton, I was the worst player he'd ever seen in his life, and to go back home to Australia immediately. Now, the problem was Jack Charlton was right. I was the worst player. And you're all laughing at me because you think it's a good story. It's a true story, right? But I couldn't control a ball, I couldn't pass, I couldn't dribble, and I couldn't shoot like the other kids. But the problem is my parents had sold their house in Australia to finance my trip, so I couldn't go home either. So I had this problem. I had to get better as a soccer player on a daily basis so I could save the money to go back to Australia in disgrace because my parents had sold their house because they believed in me. So anyway, there's a few laughs out there. Everybody knows that story. It's a true one. So how about this then? I figured out, right, in the car park in Middlesbrough that, and this was a brick wall, by the way, and that was a brick wall, and I drew on the wall with chalk, and I drew on the floor with chalk. That was when I was 15-year-old, right? No apps, no website. In fact, that was black and white television. That's how long ago that was. So now, look at all the interactive technology and the fact that not only am I beating my own personal best of getting the ball and giving the ball, right, but now the video clips embedded with the data are on my iPhone. So all of a sudden, I know I'm a better player on a daily basis because I've done my soccer homework. That's idea number one. Anybody like it? Put your hand up if you like that idea. Okay, test you out. Put your hand up if you don't like that idea. Watch it, mate. Kidding. Anyway, I've been told by very important coaches that this doesn't work and that it's a gimmick, by the way. What I just told you. But what it enabled me to do was to get better at the 4 skills. And I'm going to show you a little bit of video. I'm going to be careful of time. How long we've got left, love? Do you know? Okay. So, you probably want to see some of this in action. So here's the concept, that you can be a better player on a daily basis if you practice the 4 skills for speed and accuracy. Okay? And the best way to get kids excited is to play them against each other. And how we do that is by using all the games that Barcelona, Real Madrid, Manchester City, Liverpool, all the little mini team games. So now we've got 4 individual skills, how fast and accurate, control, pass, dribble, shoot. Now we have team games and we have kids racing against each other. Then we put that into 6-a-side. And why 6-a-side? Well, because a big game like this, right, there's too much running, there's not enough engagement with the ball, and you don't get the touch. And the word that drives it more than anything, it's not fun, the big game. 6-a-side, when you do 1 touch and 2 touch, it's the most fun I've ever had in my life. Remember when I talked about joy? When we started, you weren't here, right? The point being, nobody's actually played a game of professional soccer here, apart from me. Mate, it is hard work. It is hard work because you don't stop running. Someone's trying to kick you, right? The guys are shouting names at you from the bench. That's your own coaches, right? If you lose the ball, all your mates are screaming at you. It's not a good place to be. 6-a-side, you do 4 times more skill in a quarter of the time, and 6-a-side, 1 touch, 2 touch. So what am I getting to? I'm getting to, first of all, you need a measurement mechanic to measure your skills. Then you need a skills format. I don't know about China, but anybody know what the X factor is? The X factor? The voice? Okay, you have something in China called Who's the King? Right? Put your hand up if that's right. It's a TV show about soccer called Who's the King, right? Okay, so it's a format. Okay, so what we've got is a soccer format that drives people much faster to do the things they do naturally at 4 times the speed. So when you come and you actually play the game, the real game, you're fully equipped with all the parts that you need. Okay, how did China win the World Cup? Okay, well, if you look at what I said, you've got to get into the culture of China. What do kids want? They want interactive equipment, they want technology, they want social media. Okay, and more than anything, right, they want to know the stars, like Hulk and Oscar, how fast and how accurate are they at control, pass, dribble, shoot. You know why? So the kids can then compare themselves to the pros from overseas. So you set the benchmarks to beat via someone like CCTV. So all of a sudden you've got something called Who's the Skills King? Not Who's the Soccer King, Who's the Skills King? Okay, then the kids upload their data and content onto the website, which then pays for facilities, right? These facilities, in the community, interactive facilities. I call them facilities. Okay? So, talk about self-sustaining. Now, here's the foreign football players that are now doing something for nothing twice a year and giving back to the Chinese kids through way of example, through your broadcasters, right, and through your schooling and education system. But it's all self-sustainable and it pays for itself. Okay, what did we say about the Germans, the Spanish, the whoever winning the World Cup? If you get more kids playing more soccer more often on a daily basis, we talk about Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours. I call this 10,000 touches a day. 10,000 focused touches on what part of foot, on what part of ball, to what effect. That is the story of soccer. All the politics, all the culture, everything else is just nonsense. It's rubbish. So our job, if China are to win the World Cup, is how do we get more of these kids playing more soccer more often? Actually, and I've just asked you the question, I know how to do it. I mean, I did this stuff on Photoshop. I'm good with Photoshop. I'm not very good at talking, but I'm good at Photoshop. So in one picture, that's how China win the World Cup. So why I'm here, I don't know how long I've got, but okay, I've got to go. I was going to show you a bunch of videos of this happening, so next time come back, request me. What I'm looking for, very quickly, I got a bunch of cancer, right? So I had dreadful operations and dreadful recovery, and I was in hospital for about a year. Anyway, long story short, that's when I decided I've got to come back into football and leave a legacy. So when I say these facilities are paid for, I mean these facilities are paid for because these players will have a little skills competition twice a year in their own training ground against each other, so it's cost nobody anything to create this new content and data that will inspire our kids in every school in China to be part of the National Skills Championships. That's the fourth big idea, right? So I want to thank you all for listening, and again, I want you to know it's sincere, it's genuine. I don't need to be doing this, but I do need to leave a legacy for football. And what I discovered in the darkest moments of both illness and when I was told I was useless, the answer to everything is in the joy of that football. And I know that China, more than anybody, is clever enough with all the assets and the resources and the president's wishes to get the clever people together and create one unified system where measurement and accountability is at the core of everything you do. So if anybody wants to be in that team, well, put your hand up to start with. Anybody coming on this journey? Anybody want to come with me? Coaches, you're very invited. Okay. Well, and that's it from me. I want to thank you for your time and effort and energy and patience, and especially the Soccerex guys for having faith in me. So thank you very much.